Okay, guys, this is going to be episode 2 of the start in the beginning of this home. As we've been talking about, investing your crypto profits into real estate. One idea would be to create some spec homes and or income producing property, even better. Airbnbs, fourplexes, apartments, that kind of thing, so you have residual income the rest of your life. You can see since the last episode, this lot has now been completely cleared, and we have a little bit of a pile of dirt over here because we're going to build a retaining wall over there. Once we build that wall, we've got to take that dirt and put it behind the wall and compact it, and so we've left some dirt on the lot for that purpose. But you can see some staking here, some string lines. We've begun the process of staking it out. I just want to point out some things to you. When you begin to stake out a lot, every lot, of course, has property corners and property lines. That's what that red pin is down there. That's a property corner. So there's one of those on all 4 corners. From those corners, depending on the zoning of your lot, you will have side yard setbacks. Front yard, side yard, and rear yard. In this particular case, this string line here, this is the property line. This string here is actually the front setback. So on this particular lot, from that red pin over here, we're back 20 feet from the street. Now I actually went 21 feet because I don't want anybody to tell me we're too close after we've dug and poured footings. So I've offset it a little bit. And this side is only 5 feet. You can see this property line here, but just barely right over here is the other one, only 5 feet away from there to here. On this side yard setback, I went 5'6". Again, just giving me 6 inches of play, so there's no question or concern or argument from the neighbors. So now I've got my side yard setback, I've got my front yard setback, and this basically becomes the corner of the house. It's going to be laid out on this lot. So keep that in mind. You'll have to look up your particular zoning and find out what setbacks that you have. Now, you can see here we've started, this is actually the garage on this house, these orange markings you're seeing. But before you can really lay the house out completely, you obviously want to lay this house out to where it is square. So if you think about it, if I go 12 inches this way, 12 inches this way, that's a 90 degree, right? Well, the diagonal across them, 12 inches this way, 12 inches this way, is actually 16.97 inches diagonally. Makes a perfect 90 degree. So if we want this house to be laid out square, the way we're going to do that is I've got an orange stake there that I have placed in the corner. I've gone 50 foot that way. Then I've come off that same orange one and come 50 foot this way to this orange stake. And so now this is 50 foot from there. And what I do now is I pull 2 tape measures, 200-foot tape measures. And I pull this one 50 feet that way. And then remember, my diagonal is 16.97 inches per foot. So 50 times 16.97 is 848 point something. Basically works out to 50 feet that way Then from this stake, pulling a tape over to that 50 foot, it would be 70 foot and 7 inches. So when the two tapes cross, when 50 foot crosses 70 foot 7 inches, we set another stake, and that means we got 50 foot that way, 50 foot this way on a 90-degree angle. Once we have a straight line there, a 90-degree and a 90-degree this way, now we can pull parallel dimensions off of that line, off of this line, and keep the house and lay the house out square. So our intention, what we do is we put a property pin at each corner, and we'll lay this house out in all of its jogs and everything that it has in it. And then what'll happen is, this is Tuesday, Thursday of this week, I have an excavator scheduled to come over and to dig these footings. Now remember, this line is actually the outside of the house. Okay, this is the outside of the house, but my footing needs to be over here. So what we do, we spray the actual outside of the house. Remember, we're gonna have 8-inch thick block, so it's actually gonna be on the inside. But our footing is gonna be 2 feet, so we're gonna have 8 inches out this way. So what we do is we tell the excavator to dig this. If you can visualize an excavator's bucket, he's got teeth on the bucket. And we tell him to dig 1 tooth out. So he'll take one of his teeth and go outside this orange line so that he's digging it wide enough for the footing to be 8 inches this way, and then 8 inches for the block and 8 inches to the inside, so that this block stem wall for the house is dead center of that footing. So that is telling your excavator just to dig 1 tooth out. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna go 2 feet deep. In our area, you gotta be concerned with what the frost line is in your location. I'm in northern Arizona. We have to be 2 feet deep to get the concrete below freeze. You don't want the concrete to freeze. It does freeze, thaw, and then the concrete will crumble. So you have to get below the freeze line. Up in Utah on Salt Lake area, they have to be 30 inches deep. So you have to look at your area. If you're in Florida, you probably got 18 inches, or, Mesa, Arizona, same thing. So you got to look for what your freeze line is. So we'll dig these 2 feet deep. And once we dig them, we'll have the backhoe guy kind of take his backhoe, turn it upside down, and knuckle down and drag that solid and flat on the bottom to help it stay compacted. And then we'll come in and start putting rebar in the footing. Once the footing is dug and we put rebar in it, we'll call for inspection from the city, and the city will come out and look at that rebar and say, okay, you're good to go. There's a couple other things we'll have to do that I'll do another video on about what needs to go on in the footing before you pour it. Things, sleeves, conduit, different things, for grounds, things like that I'll tell you about when we actually are putting the steel in. But for now, we're underway. We're getting started. Okay, good morning, everybody. Another update on this home build. You can see we have the footings are now dug, and once those footings are dug, you need to put rebar down in the bottom of your footing. You want that rebar to be about 3 inches from the bottom, because you're going to put about 12 to 14 inches of concrete in the footing. So these 2 horizontal pieces of rebar go all the way around the perimeter of the house, all the way around, obviously connecting it as a solid bond beam. One thing I want to point out right here is you see this copper wire here. There's actually 10 feet of it sticking out of will be sticking out of the footing, but then it goes down and it's wrapped around. See if I can get down here. It's wrapped around this piece of rebar for 20 feet. It goes all the way down here. You can hopefully see that piece of copper, bare copper. It's 1/4 inch. That's called a UFR ground. Basically, that grounds the house. So what's going to happen is right here on the corner of the garage, the sun is making this difficult, but right here, here's the corner of the garage, but right here about 4 feet back will be the electrical panel on the house. That UFR ground tied to that rebar steel in the ground will come up and will get bonded to the electrical panel, grounding the house and the electrical system. So let's see what else you can see these. You see these grade pins here? So once we've dug the footing and we put the rebar in there, we go through and we shoot grade each one of these pins all the way around. There's a whole bunch of them. Again, the sun is making it really difficult to see, but in each one of these footings you'll see these grade pins all the way down here and there, and basically they're all the same height, and that's the height that we're going to pour the concrete to. So we'll go along and run the concrete in there until it gets to the top of those grade pins, and then we know that the concrete is as level as can be for the footing. Once we pour this concrete and it's wet, you may remember all these green stakes I've showed you before. Well, then we come back through and run a quick string line from stake to stake, and that shows us where our exterior walls are again. And we're gonna stab, what's called stab. Maybe the lighting will be better over here. Then we're gonna stab the, yeah, it's not much better. Too early in the morning. Anyway, we're gonna stab the vertical rebar into the wet concrete, right in line with that string line, so that, remember, I've said it before, our block's only 8 inches, so we have to be within 4 inches of that string line when we put our verticals. Every 4 feet, all the way along this whole entire house, every 4 feet has to have a vertical piece of rebar sticking up within 4 inches of that string line, so that when we run our block stem wall, we just lay that block right over the top of that rebar, and that rebar gets grouted solid with concrete, creating that solid stem wall, where the rebar in the stem wall is tied to the rebar in the footing, connecting the whole foundation. Okay, so we've actually got the steel in, we're set up, obviously dug, we've shot our grade, we've got our inspection called in right now. The thing that has to happen is the city inspector needs to come. He needs to look at our footings, see if there's no loose dirt or debris. They want the footings to be clean and compacted. And assuming there's no loose debris in there, we have our steel, we have our grade set, we have our UFR ground in, that's that copper line. He'll give us what's called an okay to pour. And he'll give us a little inspection ticket, says okay, and then we've got concrete set up tentatively for we'll call 11 o'clock this morning, and then we'll pour this footing hopefully today. And man, that's just always a big day once you get your footings poured, because you finally feel like you're getting up out of the dirt and you're starting to build a house. So there's several little, I think this will be the 4th little video of this process of trying to get out of the ground. I'm convinced by the time we get a concrete slab here, we have built half the house is done. By the time you get blueprints drawn, you get them approved at your HOA for your subdivision, you get them approved at the city, you come out here and you clear the trees and build the pad, you lay the house out, you actually get the house dug, Then you get the steel in it, you get the UFR ground in it, and you get an inspection on the footing, and then you pour the footing, and then you come in and you put your block stem wall up, and then you have to get the block stem wall inspected, and then once that's inspected, you get to actually fill the block with concrete and grout it solid, and then you start setting up the floor. And when you set up the floor, you bring in your road base and fill it up, and then the plumber comes in and tears that all up and puts in his plumbing in the floor, and then he gets a plumbing inspection, and then once that's done, then that can be backfilled, and you got to rebuild your floor again and make it nice and flat, and then you got to put rebar in the floor, then you got to get that inspected, and then once they give you okay to pour, you finally pour your concrete floor, and that's just the main floor. Then you got to come back and do what's called a pour back and do your porches, front and back porches, and your garage, which are separate concrete pours that have separate inspections. So the point is, you take all of that, and by the time you're standing on a concrete slab with a lumber package ready to start framing, you've really built half the house. Okay, so that's me rambling on, guys. Again, hopefully this is helpful to you to, know kind of how the house gets started, the process. You don't need to know all this process. You just need to have this general idea, because you can hire a concrete man to come in and do everything I just described. But it's important for you to know how the process happens and how to get to the point of at least a foundation. So hopefully these videos help you with that, whether you're building spec houses or building your own house. Hope this is helpful. Sorry I had to have the camera turned around, but I can't flip it during a video. If somebody knows how, tell me in the comments, will you? But if you like this stuff, subscribe to my channel, share it with others, repost it on Twitter. All of that is helpful and appreciated. Thanks, guys.